We have been doing whole grains for a while. This is part 5. So by now, did you know? Or do you know now that whole grains are superfoods?
Yes.
Now you know. Okay, in the beginning you may not have known, but after 5 sessions, I'm sure that you should know by this time. I think I'm going to wrap it up with this session. There's a lot more, but I think I'm going to wrap it up with this session. Okay, I'm going to give you some tips to boost whole grain in your diet. We have talked a lot about it. Let's see how we can boost it in our diet. Be sure you're ready to eat cereals. You know what ready to eat cereals are? Those that you don't have to cook, those that you pour from a box into your bowls, those are you ready to eat. Be sure that you're ready to eat cereals are made with whole grain, or try oatmeal as a whole grain food. Next one. Substitute whole grain flour for at least half of the flour in homemade breads, muffin, biscuits, pancakes, or waffle recipes. In some cases, you may have to add a little more leavening because you're using the whole grain flour, which is kind of heavier. But when you get recipes, try to, instead of using all white flour, try to substitute some whole grain flour in the recipes. 3, substitute brown rice, red rice, black rice, bulgur, or kasha for white rice. Or mix a combination of the different types in side dishes or stir fry. I know, yes?
We need to remind people that the red and black rice is actually red and black. It's not.
Yes, they are.
Not extra color or anything. That is the kind of rice. And it's
the very first time I cooked black rice, it stained the pot. And I'm like, what kind of coloring did they put in this rice? Then I went to research it and I realized that's the rice. It is black and it has a lot of antioxidants. That's hence the color of the rice. And it's what we do sometimes, we mix black rice and brown rice and cook them together. So you can mix different things and come up with, you can mix red rice and brown rice together and cook it, and it comes out pretty nice.
very nice.
So experiment. When dining out, for those of us who eat out, request whole grain food. Example, brown rice at the Asian restaurants. When you go to your Asian places, request brown rice instead of white rice. Whole wheat pasta at Italian restaurants. Now, these days, most of them do have whole wheat. Whole grain bread for sandwiches instead of white bread. So you can request, you are the one paying your money, you can request what you want, you're paying for it. Try less common grains like barley, whole wheat couscous. Couscous comes as either white or whole wheat, so you can get the whole wheat one. Whole wheat couscous, amaranth, quinoa, we talked about all these already, teff as a side dish. So you can try these less common grains as side dishes. Add barley, brown rice, or millet in homemade soups. Those are pretty good to add in soup. So these are some ways you can increase whole grain in your diet. And recommendation, the American Dietary Guideline, I missed on that one last time. This is a recommendation they give for adults. Eat at least half your grains as whole grains. That's the recommendation, at least 3 to 5 servings. A serving is about an ounce equivalent, and about 3 to 5 servings a day will give you about 45 grams of whole grain in your diet. Children also need whole grain, not just adults. Children need at least 2 to 3 servings or more per day also. So whole grain is not just for us adults, but for children also. Okay, what's considered a serving? A serving, or an ounce equivalent, is like half a cup of brown rice or whole grain pasta or cooked cereal. Half a cup of any of those is considered as a serving. 3 cups of popcorn is considered 1 serving or 1 ounce equivalent. 1 cup of whole grain ready-to-eat cereal is considered as an ounce equivalent of whole grain. 1 slice of whole grain bread. So this is just an example of what is considered as a serving. So when we tell you about 3 to 5 servings a day, it's not really hard to get that in your diet. if you just think of what you're eating. So these are just examples of what is considered as 1 ounce equivalent or 1 serving. And even though, here are some other tips. Even though some foods are processed, such as crackers and ready-to-eat cereal, they can still be important sources of whole grain. Look for the grams of whole grain on your packages. Most of your packages now give you grams of whole grain. Foods with at least 8 grams of whole grain per serving can significantly contribute to meeting whole grain, your whole grain need in your diet. So look for on your packages. Most of them today, it's required that they tell you how much is in there. Fiber is not necessarily an indication of whole grain. Remember that. Something can be high in fiber and not necessarily a whole grain product. Although it's a common belief that 3 grams of fiber per serving is a cutoff to ensure a food is whole grain, different grains naturally have different fiber content. For example, whole wheat has more fiber than brown rice does, and brown rice is still considered a whole grain. So the fiber in the product does not always tell you that it is not whole grain or it is whole grain. Foods high in bran may not necessarily be whole grain foods either. Although bran is an excellent source of fiber and a healthy eating option, is only one of the 3 parts that make up the whole grain. What's the other parts?
Endosperm.
And the germ. Okay, because for example, somebody can remove the bran alone and add a lot of bran to a product, and that will make it high fiber, but that's not going to make it a whole grain product. If I just put bran in white flour, that's not a whole grain product. It's white flour with added bran, added fiber. So be aware of that. Whole grain foods include all 3 parts of the grain: the bran, the endosperm, and the germ, in the same relative proportion of the original grain. So even though it may be processed like when you have crackers or something like that, it should include all of the whole grain to be considered whole grain, not just one part removed and added to something. With whole grain, the whole is truly greater than the sum of the parts. The individual nutrients in whole grain food each offer important health benefits. When they work together in the whole food, they synergistically, that means together, perform in powerful ways to help protect your health. In other words, instead of removing just one part of something, when you have the whole of it, they all work together to give better health. So be aware of that's why whole grain is encouraged. Okay, and now we have a little food for thought. In grains, fruits, vegetables, and nuts are to be found all the food elements that we need. And yes, we can get everything from those. If we will come to the Lord in simplicity of mind, He will teach us how to prepare wholesome food free from the taint of flesh meat. And that's from Sermons and Talk, Volume 1, page 354. And it is also in Counsels on Food and Diet. Okay, so that's my thought for you today. And just remember, we have done a lot on whole grain. And remember that whole grains are superfood and they are beneficial to your health.